That's interesting.
I think you've been on. I think you've been on 3 times or so, and I think Anuj was on all 3. I want to say he was. But he's busy. He's abroad. He won't reveal that publicly. But now it's
I
on
see.
the podcast.
Well, we just get to spoil everything for everybody. Anuj is in Germany training for something very special.
Very special. This is the Experience Podcast with me and someone else.
Hello, I'm the someone else, and I'm not flaking out this time.
Wow. So why don't you talk about what happened last time? I think it was like a couple months ago, right?
Sure, like 2 months ago? God, has it been that long? Oh my God. Anyway, yeah, so I got a call from a friend that I know, and he's like senior year of high school or whatever. He's like, can you show me this or that? I'm like, sure. And so I was tutoring him, and I did not recognize how long that was going to take. And immediately I get a text from Anuj, is like, hey, you coming on? I'm like, fuck. Oh. So I was like, no, damn, sorry. Yeah, that was my bad. Probably should have I should have scheduled that earlier, but I don't know. You just kind of called out of the blue. I didn't think it would take that long.
Yeah, all good. As you noticed tonight, plans, schedules change, and I always tell people that's the hardest part of doing this podcast is scheduling.
Well, I'm glad you have me back on now. The alienation has only lasted so long.
And we actually got like a moderately breaking news over the last couple of days that we can talk about, I suppose.
I think I know what that news is.
Yeah, some people think it's good news, some people think it's bad news. What do you think the news is?
Well, that would be the firing of Jeff Collins and Todd Stansberry, correct?
They were released, yes. They were relieved of their duties, I think is the politically correct way to say it.
They were dismissed.
It's kind of like not firing because it's almost like I was talking on this, but like they kind of get more money up front now.
Yeah.
Because of the way the buyout works.
Yeah.
Like it's almost good for them to.
Yeah, you get paid millions of dollars to suck at your job.
they want you to not work for you, so they want you to not work for them so badly that they'll pay you to not work for them.
Here's the most generous severance package you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. So what do you think about if you want to do them individually or they kind of ended up being tied together over the last couple of years?
Yeah, that was weird to watch because after I graduated, I wasn't quite in the know as much as I was when I was there, so I was only following as an outsider, and it seemed like, it really seemed like last year, certainly, the COVID year was probably excusable because COVID, but after 2021, it was like, okay, this is not going to work out. I don't think Collins is the guy, so they're probably going to let him go at the end of last year, and then they didn't. It was like, okay, that is a choice for sure. And then I read into it, it's like he had like a 6 or a 7 year contract or some shit. I'm like,
yeah, so it's 7 year.
7 year, even worse. I was like, my first thought was, didn't we stop doing that after the old basketball coach? I'm blanking on the name now, but the guy before Pastner, I've totally forgotten his name. Apparently not. I was like, huh. And so immediately I was thinking, well, I imagine Stansberry had something to do with that because he seemed really big on Jeff Collins for some reason. And my question there was, okay, well, you realize this is a sinking ship, right? Like you end the season getting like, what was it, like 100-0 in 2 games? in terms of the score differential or something like that. That was very clearly a fireable kind of offense. And so instead they kept, Stansbury kept him around and was like, okay, I get why people want Stansbury fired now, is because he stuck his neck out for Collins for some reason, and this was the inevitable result when results were going to not be forthcoming.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where it's kind of like if you, at the end of the 2021 season, for I don't know if we mentioned this, we're talking about Georgia Tech football head coach and athletic director, or non-Georgia Tech listeners, I suppose. But yeah, it was one of those situations at the end of the 2021 season where it's if you have any doubts about the head coach, it's probably time to move on, right? Like, you shouldn't need a prove it year. Like, you've already probably seen enough. It had been 3 years, and if you want to give a small excuse for the 2020 year, okay, every team was dealing with the same circumstances, right? So it's a bit of a wash, but and I think one of the biggest problems, like you mentioned, just getting blown out, but also just like they can lose games, but there needs to be
progress.
Tangible and visible progress. It can't just be Collins saying, no, you guys can't see. There is progress. You can't see it, but it's there. It's like that's the famous line for coaches about to get fired, right? That's what they all say. It's like, you can't see it. It's there. And yeah, getting blown out and just not being competitive in these games, and like the sloppy mistakes, like the punt block, or the block punts that you see, the pre-start penalty, is like, that's all coaching.
Yep. Yeah, it very much seemed like, even in 2019, when I was seeing the new offense, you could see that, okay, this is going to be a transition period, sure, but there's some red flags about this coaching staff. This offense seems like they have maybe 10 plays, and they have the same script every game, like run, run, pass, punt, or run, 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 punt. And there's very little creativity. There's and the other thing on the other side of the ball, Collins is this defensive guy, or supposedly, because he's had a history as a reasonable defensive coordinator with, let's say, Florida. He had a decent defense at Temple. And then he comes in, and the defense actually regresses way, way the fuck downward. We were talking, I know, in a previous podcast about just how cataclysmically terrible the secondary was, but it was not looking that much better this year either. So it cratered, and that's supposedly Collins' specialty. So when, I don't know, it really did seem, I agree with you, it seemed like he should have been gone last year, and I don't really understand why the Band-Aid wasn't pulled off, other than Stansbury was like, no, please give him more time. And I think at some point recently, you get blanked by Ole Miss, and I think that was like, okay, that was the moment where the boosters were, okay, this is it, we're done, we're pressing the abort button, we are terminating the simulation.
I don't know, like, what did you need to see? Like, they only gave it a few games anyway. Like, what else did they need to see this year?
So I wonder if there's some behind the scenes politics going, and obviously there is, right? Because this is a lot of money. This is a Southern football.
Yeah, there's the elephant in the room is the size of the buyout, which dropped, I think, by like $5 million if they waited till the end of the season.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Again, it seemed like the timing was either let's do it after last year and get a new coach, or embrace the suck and just be terrible again. And neither one was actually what happened. They just kind of got, I guess, trigger happy and were like, all right, fuck this, we're ejecting them now.
Yeah, it's fine, right? Like I don't know, I don't know where the buyout money comes from, but
yeah, I guess
wasn't there a thing that some boosters raised money, or some alumni raised money for the buyout? Was that a thing? Is that fake news? No.
Honestly, I have no idea. I just was following the news. I'm like, oh, both of them are out now, huh? And I guess that leads me to Stansbury too, because I had kind of understood, following from the outside, that there was a dissatisfaction there because while the other, like a lot of the other programs at Tech, baseball, women's volleyball, basketball, both basketball teams have had some degree of success, varying degrees of success in the past couple of years. Ultimately it's college football in the South that matters, and that's going to generate your revenue. And ultimately all the other programs are ultimately going to be supported by the football program if for athletics, right? So when football wasn't producing, I knew that Stansbury would be on the hot seat. I just didn't think it would be so, I didn't think he would be fired at the same time as Collins, but I guess they were kind of tied at the hip.
Yeah, I guess it's a clean slate. I know, so from what I understand, Stansbury hired another, executive to handle the women's sports. So I think a lot of people are talking about that, and by a lot of people I mean Georgia Tech students and stuff. But I think they were mentioning that. So the success of the women's volleyball team and the women's basketball team, which again were kind of already successful before Stansbury showed up, but moderately successful. But have really done pretty well the last several years and Stansbury was hired in 2016. So he's been there for quite a bit. Collins obviously wasn't hired until 2019. Or was he hired? Whatever. Whether it was late 2018 or before the 2019 football season. So there was a few years in there, and yeah. So a lot of the women's sports I think have been sort of developed and run by sort of a different or a subdivision within athletics. And you mentioned things like baseball. That was already kind of successful before Stansbury showed up. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to credit how much success or lack of success you put on the athletic director. But like you said, I think just the doubling down, or you could even argue tripling down on Collins, and then honestly, the team looks just as sloppy as it did the first year, and you can make a case it looks worse than anything we've seen. And that you could say it's some morale and he's lost talent, but that's also kind of on him, right? Losing all the talent and losing good players because they say that they want to win more is kind of sad.
Yeah, I remember, to me, the writing was on the wall when Jahmyr Gibbs transferred. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy can't keep what he's recruiting. And so you're going to see whatever good talent there is bleed away, or the cream of the crop. And it's like, okay, yes, Collins is, let's say, better at recruiting for a modern system than maybe Paul Johnson was. But if you suck, which we do, you're not going to keep the talent around. And so you're going to, Tech is a school that's going to need a better coach, an established coach, to actually be there over and over and over again, be a constancy for the program, and elevate the talent that we do have. Because it's not like you're going to rake in. It's not like you're going to rake in the recruits until you start winning serious football, and that's going to take time to build.
Yeah, and because I don't know what else to say about Stansbury. It's hard to know. Maybe there's some funding issues and that sort of thing, but.
Well, I'm sure there's all kinds of behind-the-scenes politics that we're not privy to as well, between the boosters, between Stansbury. And you always have that thing with Georgia Tech where progressively more and more the administration doesn't particularly like to support its athletic program. I know a guy actually, and I won't say his name, but I know a guy personally who is on the one of the boards for the athletic boosters or something. And he complains all the time that the administration just kind of doesn't give a damn about the program. It's like, well, okay, if you guys have success, whatever, but we're a research institute, so that is not what we care about. Of course, if you have a good college football program in the South, that literally prints money. So I'm not sure what the calculus is there, but it's probably, again, there's all kinds of politics, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it makes sense that they don't necessarily prioritize the athletics, but maybe just maybe not necessarily more resources, but a better allocation, or someone that knows how to manage those would be ideal, and maybe that's just what Stansbury wasn't doing well enough, I suppose. Maybe he just kept asking for more money or whatever he was doing.
Yeah, and it could just be the Collins thing, right? It could just be that, well, I'm tied at the hip to Collins because I believe in my guy, and your guy is just not getting it done. And so inevitably what happens is you have to get rid of them both in that circumstance. I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, do you have anything else you want to talk about with that? Like I said, some people see it as good news. Some people see it as sort of bad news. Maybe, I don't know. Could be a nice reset. Do you have any? There's already articles on all the discount sports websites about who's gonna be the new replacement for each position. Got any anything you want to mention there, or too early?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, in terms of like specific people, it's definitely too early, but ultimately, I think it's a decision that had to be made. Collins simply had, I mean, he cratered a couple of years ago, frankly, and that had to be removed from he had to be removed because it was not going to work out, and should have done it at the end of last year, but you waited and now you do it in the middle of this year. So the only good news, well, I guess there's two good things here. One, you need to try something different, and now you have to, and something different can be bad, it can be good, anything in between. And two, this does give you some serious time to start scouting who can be a good coach for the program, right? Who can be some guy who can come in, some guy who's going to be able to elevate talent in particular. Recruiting is fine, but really you've got to have something that's going to elevate talent because it's going to be very hard to recruit, especially in the early periods.
Yeah, and you'd hope doing this, making these changes early helps with the recruiting. You can kind of reset your recruiting. I find it. I don't know. What do you think about Jeff Sims?
Oh, Jeff Sims is, God, he's frustrating, man. Like, I really think there just needs to be a better system for him because I think he's grown. I think he's gotten better over time, but there are these same annoying tendencies that are 100% coachable that are just detail oriented that are preventing him from taking, I think, the next step to being a pretty damn good college quarterback. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit for a reason, right? So I really want to see him get a shot with one, like a serious offensive staff that knows what they're doing. It's like, hey, all right, here's how you actually unfuck your footwork. Here's how you are, have these plays, and then of course then you can lean on his athleticism as well. Like, I just think, as frustrating as his tenure here has been, I guess I still believe in the talent. I think there's just more there that a better staff could unlock.
Yeah, I find it interesting they brought all these transfer quarterbacks in and recruits and all that, and I don't know. I guess he's still the best option. He probably is from a long-term perspective, and they want him. It's kind of like a maybe a sunk cost fallacy thing where Collins wants them to succeed, right? But it just so it didn't work out.
It could be like that, and perhaps he's just a guy who's not going to develop, and that's fine. But I just think there's something there, but I really don't think this staff was the one to bring that out. Again, it could be that there are certainly better options out there, and maybe it's Sims himself. He has to do some personal work, and I wish him the best in that. But I don't know. It's just really hard to succeed in this Tech offense the past couple of years, which has only moderately gotten better and has still not been able to score. So it's just hard to divorce any kind of specific player blame from how bad the coaching has been.
Yeah, I mean the Chip Long hire was strange. I mean, it was like kind of one of the most uninteresting hirings, And that was also another, going back to it, another red flag is when you have to fire your entire staff, or not entire, but he replaced like half his staff. Collins did, and that's also not a good. It's a bit of a red flag for you have the right coach. If the coach is saying, no, it was everyone else's fault. It wasn't mine. It's because I replaced these 5 people. But I know some of them left because they got paid more somewhere else, but still.
Yeah. Well, wish them the best. Time for the system reset again.
Yeah. Again, perhaps an easier transition. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to mention next, so we will just keep stalling. Anything else you wanted to talk about? I guess maybe non-Georgia Tech division, or do you still have something to talk about with
that? I mean, there's there's any kind of topic I'm fine with. I do think personally my interest in college football in particular is just dead in the water right now because there's like 3 teams every year that are actually matter, and Tech has been bad, so I've like not paid attention to the the ACC or the games that really hardly of the games we play I kind of don't watch. But
it's like hard to watch now.
It is actively hard to watch.
Because the other thing I remember, the other thing I was going to mention is just like all the special teams is just terrible. Like they historically, or not historically, I mean the past few years, their Georgia Tech special teams has been just hard to watch. Whether it's, now like somehow Presley Harvin got worse. And the blocked punts now, and the blocked field goals, right? Like the missed field goals, the kickoffs that were bad. Like pretty much the punt coverage, pretty much every aspect of special teams is just sloppy and bad.
Yeah, putting the special in special teams for sure. And I think, I think that's that. I was just watching some clips. It's like, it seems like across college football right now, there's kicking problems. There's, it's weird because you got that super senior effect last year with the COVID stuff, and now it's like you've normalized back down to, okay, here's the normal flow of talent for the most part. And as a result, you've got a whole bunch of teams that are just kind of in flux. But the nature of college football right now is there's 3. Really, there's almost never more than 3 teams right now. It's like Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. I really don't see anything. I don't see anybody competing with them. And it was interesting because I heard they've actually are voting on expanding the playoffs, or that actually went through, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you think? They're going to 12 teams.
Honestly, I think it's too little too late because it really doesn't matter. And and it's a little cynical, but it's great for the positive is it's great for the programs who can make it in to make it in, right? Because there'll be that prestige, you'll get more money, you get more recruits. That's 100% positive for any kind of person who wins, or a team that wins their conference. It allows for the elevation of better, of like a pit team like Pittsburgh last year, right? Which they were never going to make the college football playoff, but under the old structure, but they won the ACC, so there you go. They would be in and at least have a chance. But in terms of actually winning the Natty, I mean, you're going to get matched up with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world, and you're going to job to them and get blown off the get blown out. And I don't know, that's I don't know if it's going to be quite the media success that the playoff committee wants, because you're going to have those. I mean, even under the old structure, right? You had 4 teams, and every single year I can remember, like the semifinals were usually 2 just absolute blowouts. They were never even remotely competitive.
Usually, or at least one of them was a blowout. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely no NFL playoffs.
I see both sides of this, right? Where it's like, you get to, like you said, elevate sort of lesser known teams and you allow them to compete and maybe you get more eyes on them, funding, all that. And then, the other side is like, well, you're diluting the playoffs. I mean, that seems like a weird complaint because, like, your complaint is that there's more football, or your complaint is the football's not as good, but then you don't have to watch it. Like, no one's making you watch those games.
For sure.
Take the weekend off. Go fishing. Like, you can come back the next weekend when there's better games. Like, right? It's free now. Like, you don't have to watch it. So, but again, like I said, maybe it's it's not the games aren't as competitive. It's not as interesting. But again, you don't have to watch it. Just wait for that. But yeah, like you said, this year, I mean, right now on that like 10 to 12 range, you have NC State, Penn State, and Utah, and probably none of them have a great shot at beating any of the super teams you mentioned in the playoffs. So.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fun seeing the matchups between those, that next tier of team, Utah or one of these, maybe a Tennessee makes it in one of these days, probably not. These teams and maybe like the annual G5 school that overachieves and, is like the Cincinnati of last year or something like that. And having a match between those kind of fairly or reasonably close in talent or whatever programs is pretty good. And I think that could generate some nice attention. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows it's just going to be one of the 3 mega teams every year and one of the other ones in the Natty. But what I will say is, I don't know, the 12 playoff team thing is interesting because I assumed it would be 8. I assumed they would try at 8 or they would try at 6. You would have but that was before, the major conference realignment, which I haven't followed the conference realignment down to a T, but it's kind of weird because half, I don't know if is the Big 12 just dead? Like, does that exist anymore after this?
Well, yeah, because it's taking all the AAC teams.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's right. They're okay.
Cincinnati and the other teams that I can't think of right now.
Yeah, okay, so
3 or 4
basically we're the giant pot and someone has got a giant stick and it's just getting stirred up in a way that hasn't happened in 30 years. And I'm almost more interested in that because I don't know, the quality of the product I can't imagine is going to improve because you just add the best G5 teams to what was already a conference that I don't take the Big 12 seriously. Does anybody? I don't know. And then there's the Pac-12 and they're resetting. All the conferences except maybe the ACC are resetting. Although the ACC, I think they did away with divisions, right? So a lot of flux right now. And I guess it makes sense that they're doing a 12, a 12 number when you've got that much chaos, that much reorganization in the college football landscape. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like why 12? Do you have any? What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know. It felt bizarre.
I have no specific insight. I can try to quickly Google it.
It's not necessary, but I was just thinking.
They probably had a bunch of rich people come together in a board meeting with a nice lunch, right? A nice catered lunch. And they decided 12.
Very expensive sandwiches at that lunch.
Well, they don't have sandwiches. They have some better.
Oh, they have caviar and fucking filet mignon. And all that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And that'll begin either 2024 or 2025. It looks like. It's a few years away, but.
Oh, so we still get to watch the same boring playoffs for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
They'll have some bye, so the first 4 teams will have a bye. I'd be interested in seeing how bowl games. So it looks like the quarterfinals and semifinals will be played in bowl games. So maybe they're adding more bowl games to the college football playoff. I don't know if that is better. I guess that might be better. Maybe some higher profile bowl games. I don't know. I don't know what bowl games are anymore because Georgia Tech doesn't go to them anymore. So
Very sad.
it's harder to follow those. But yeah, and then the realignment, I kind of don't care. It's like you said, these things get shuffled around all the time. Not all the time, but like conferences and teams move around. Historically, have moved around a lot. So I don't see why people would get up all hold their high horse on that when these things change every 10 to 20 years or so. Anyway, yeah, I know. It's kind of like, well, we'll see. You'll get used to the new normal. I mean, I know change is hard, but like you said, I don't see this necessarily improving the quality of play, but I don't necessarily see it declining. I don't see the quality of play declining either, at least on a grand scale. There's already super teams, and everything's already kind of weighted against certain aspects of the game. So.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a realignment is honestly going to affect anything much at all. I mean, I guess you have different subgroups of teams, like you're just resetting what kind of sets they're grouped into. But at the end of the day, I mean, the SEC is going to have 2 teams in the playoff every year, and Ohio State will be, the 4 out of the 5 years they're actually good, they'll be in the playoffs, and then one other team might matter, and then the rest of, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it'll change much.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're good there. We can end the podcast here. I don't think we're going to get another surprise guest soon. So.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. As per usual, we end up talking about a ball game we never play.
Yeah.
But of course.
Yeah. But like I said, we have breaking news. So that was and this comes
true.
out tomorrow. So this will be fresh on people's minds if they care. If they don't care, then if you guys don't care about that topic, just let us know and we won't talk about that again. Well, it's kind of depressing.
Well, depressing looking back on it and how much of a blunder it turned out to be. I just wish we moved on quicker. I think the writing was on the. Frankly, people didn't want to hear it at the time, but I think the writing was on the wall in 2019. But he was always gonna be given at least 3 years. I just think that when you sign a coach to a 6 or 7 year contract in this case, that is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what.
Was he? Yeah, were other schools trying to was he negotiating with other schools? Is that why? Right.
Well, I guess the thought is if he turns out to be any good, like seriously good, when one of the Blue Bloods fires their coach inevitably, let's say Texas gets tired of Steve Sarkisian, and that guy, insert coach here at Georgia Tech, maybe Jeff Collins in an alternate timeline is an incredible coach. Let's poach him, right? We'll just pay him a shit ton of money and he'll, break his contract with Tech or whatever, easy. So the idea is, well, let's have him under contract for longer so that he is less inclined to move elsewhere. The problem is, number one, if he sucks, you're screwed because you're anchored to him for many, many years. Second of all, if he's good enough to be eyed by Blue Bloods, he's going to go there anyway, right? Like, he is going to jump ship to a better program 100% anyway. So I just think that the contract never made any sense. I think you should do 4 years and see where you're at, right?
Yeah. And even if he's so good, you pay him more, or you can't afford to pay him, and that's how your budget works anyway. Like, that's how it worked anyway. So you can always renegotiate. But one other thing, last thing, I was talking to my dad about this like a week ago. I was like, man, this is before we knew he was going to get fired. But I was like, yeah, they're struggling. They just got blown out again. And Dad's like, wow, you got to give it till at least the 4th year so you can see, how his recruits happen. I'm like, look, it's already this is the 4th year. It's like, oh, well. There's that.
Yeah, I don't like that argument either, because if you get serious talent, you're going to see it within 2 years. I mean, frankly, you should probably see a little bit of freshman talent the first year, right? I mean, if they're more talented than your current roster, they should be playing anyway. And yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but I mean, and it's the same thing with like Jeff Sims. You saw the talent immediately, but it's not developing, and that's the critical thing there. It's not. Yeah, I think people are caught up on you need to see the recruits and what they're doing. No, you need to see how the talent is developing over time, and it should be by a large amount progressing upward on average. And in fact, with Collins, it was precisely the opposite direction, and you could tell that from year 2 onward. And COVID year or whatever, but it was pretty obvious.
This is Jeff Sims' 3rd year.
I mean, you would have hoped he would have done more by now, but like I said, not most of the best player we had left for Alabama, and now no one seems to be developing, period. So it's hard to tell.
6.3 yards per attempt. Jeez. Okay. Well, I think we're good here then. We've run that into the ground. I'll let you go.
Of course.
You got tutoring to do. Probably.
Not tonight, thank God.
So, thanks for coming on. Next time maybe we'll talk about something a little happier, a little lighter.
Absolutely. Would
love it. Maybe we'll have a new coach by then, by the time you come on. So we can talk about that or something else, or just something random like trees. All right. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you.